All right, welcome to the CDR and Databricks office hours. On the screen, you will see two links that I will be popping in the chat here shortly. You can navigate to those to view previous training resources or upcoming training events and topics. All right, before we get started, I'm going to go quickly through some administrative announcements. This meeting is being recorded. Please stay muted to minimize interruptions. You are more than welcome to use the Zoom chat to ask your questions that are related to today's office hour topic. And at the end of this call, we will be holding a Q&A if in case you do have questions, and Katie will be addressing those accordingly. And then also all meeting materials will be made available in the CCSQ DNA portal after this call. Just give us a few more days to turn those around. And then also at the end of the session, we will be administering a survey. Please provide your feedback. Let us know how we're doing. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing and hand it over to Katie.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I'd also like to put another link in the chat that is to a folder that has these notebooks in them. It'll look like this. There are a couple of images in the notebook, so you'll see that. We're going to talk about two different ways to make a dashboard. So there's one here, and then there's a SQL dashboard here. Okay, it says I'm screen sharing. So you should have access to that, and that you can refer back to that later. And one other thing I wanted to point out before so today we're talking about Databricks dashboards, and I'm going to talk about those two ways. Note this little square icon, dashboards, over on the left side. That's for the SQL dashboard, and I will refer to that again in a minute. But I did want to make my screen as big as possible for you guys. And there we go. So that was going to go away. But thank you for joining today. My name is Katie. I'm on the user services team. I'm excited to talk to you about dashboards and Databricks today. If you guys don't mind, if you're able to put in the chat, if you've used dashboards outside of Databricks, if that's something that you guys do a lot, or maybe if you've done the dashboards in Databricks, put that in the chat too. I'd be interested to know, be nice to share, like what are some of the things that you guys are commonly doing with dashboards if you are using them. So there are two types of dashboards that you can do in Databricks. And I see I'm getting a couple. Yeah, a lot of dashboards, Power BI. That one's a popular one. I've used Tableau a little bit before, and yeah, thanks for sharing. And I'm sure some of those will keep popping up. I think there's a little bit of okay, QuickSight, our shiny. Yes, that one's fun. Thank you guys. So yeah, those two ways you're looking at a notebook right now. And that's one way you can create a dashboard in Databricks. And that little square icon that was on the left menu is also up here. If you create a notebook and you do like one or two special little things, you'll get this icon in a notebook, and then you can click on a dashboard that it will pop up, and it creates the dashboard from the notebook. And so I have two dashboards to share with you today. They're very similar, and I'll touch on why there are things that are different in one versus the other, because there are things that were different. And the data that we're using today is the Washington State EVs data. It's all of the electric vehicles registered in the state of Washington. The data that we have in the CDR and that CDR PSA community schema, that is a snapshot of the data that are shared, like a 2024 snapshot. We don't plan on updating it. It's just a useful tool to help show off some of the things that we can do in Databricks. Our learning objectives for today, I just want to make sure that you have these different choices in making the dashboards in Databricks. Maybe you'll hopefully remember some of the pros and cons of each. if you're hopefully feel comfortable at the end of the presentation, being able to create a simple SQL dashboard or playing around in there, being able to create a simple notebook dashboard. And because I think if you've been using Databricks, that one is probably the one that would be the easiest for you to do if you're already using Databricks. So again, here's a little bit about the Washington State EV data. And there is a link here I've included in this notebook that, oh, thank you for sharing the notebook link. This link in the notebook tells you about some of the data files in our CDR PSA community schema, and then that has more details about this particular one. And I have a select star just to show you a little bit more what this one looks like. The reason that I picked this one is because it has some locations. It has state, because my favorite visualization is a map of the US with data for each state. It has model year, which is a numeric variable that we can do some things with, make a category we can do things with. And then I've also picked electric range and base MSRP. There are a lot of missing data rows for these two. So they're pretty sparse. They're not one you would actually use, but as an example, I picked them. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the SQL dashboards. And there's a lot of point and click involved in these. I have some tutorial resources here to help you if you want to refer back to how to do things. If you wanted to get started with Databricks, has a pretty decent tutorial that has a lot of examples. So here's something that looks real nice. How to import an existing dashboard, look at some of the different things. It kind of helps you how to click around and do what you need to do if you need a refresher. The SQL dashboard that I have to share with you looks like this. I'm actually going to zoom out on it a bit so that you can see. I don't make some things too small, but just to give you an idea of what's on here, I have a title. This little thing here is a filter. And then there is this here is filtered. This is not, the rest of it's not. Here's a table. You can do bar charts. This one is a map that I am able to put points on based on latitudes and longitudes, because there is a column in the data. Sorry, I'm clicking back, and I know that zooming in, that's a little bit fudgy clicking around. Okay. So this vehicle location, and I'm going to touch on, I'm going to touch on why it's important to point this out, that the formatting is very important for these dashboards. So back to the dashboard, the SQL dashboard, you're able to have different pages. This is a draft view. So whenever you create a dashboard in Databricks, which I can show you real quick. So if we go over to the left-hand menu, I'm going to open this in a new tab, dashboards, and just create dashboard. There was just a big button up in the top, and then it kind of starts to load some stuff. And here you have this blank page. It gives you some ideas. The first thing you need to do is go to this data tab, and you need to either add a data source, which can be just a table from the catalog. I don't recommend you do that unless you have something like that's kind of small enough to do that with. I recommend that you create from SQL, and I'll show you in detail in a bit, but I wanted to point that out. And then the other important thing is this toolbar down here. And what's nice is when you click create new dashboard, it gives you this, what are each of these things? Add a visualization is this little chart picture. Add a text box is this one. Add a filter. And then you can move things around. So that's the nice thing about all these dashboards that you build on Databricks, is you can click and drag stuff, and you can resize things pretty easily. So this toolbar is important down here. And so just a quick overview of what's on here. I have a text box. It expects you have markdown in here. So this is just like the markdown that you put in the notebook. I have a header one hashtag, two hashtags for a header, and then, put some kind of data source information. You can have multiple text bars to differentiate your different sections, maybe give some information about trends or something like that, but you have to manually change the text. So if something changes when your dashboard updates, just keep that in mind. And then here I have a filter where you can attach this. This particular filter is only on this one because I used the full data set for this. It's just select star from the data. And since I'm using a column from that data, that I can use that to filter out. So if I select something else like Arizona, and then I need to deselect Washington, then it's going to refresh whatever is attached to this. So the cluster is thinking about it, and it takes it a second, but there you go. There's 13 rows for this state in this data set. And then you can do tables. The table here, this is formatted as a string, and this table has 3 columns: the make, there's the average MSRP as a number, and then there's the average MSRP as a string. And the average MSRP as a number is important because I used it to sort this table and get the top 5 lowest values. And then I also use that to create the string. But I didn't want to look at the numeric value. It's not as pretty. I wanted to add a $ and put a comma and have it formatted to 2 decimal points. So that is, and I didn't want to use the built-in formatting that is offered because it couldn't do everything that I wanted to do. It wasn't as flexible as if I just created it myself and said, just display this column, because it can display my column for me, but it wasn't able to format the numbers how I wanted. That's another reason why I recommend that you do the SQL query options. And then average MSRP by make. So this is all of the data instead of just the top 5. And I'm using that numeric column to get the to do the bar chart. And then down here at the bottom, I'm going to talk more about maps in a minute. This one is the format that it expects for the points is a latitude and a longitude. They have to be 2 separate things. But what I showed you before was a column. It was a single column that was a string, and it had the latitude and longitude in the same cell. So you have to separate them. You have to do a little bit of work with the data before you can put it into a map with these things. So the next thing I'm going to show you is the data part, this data tab that makes it all work. So the select star from the whole thing. Okay, and then if you tell it that add a data source, it will just create this for you. And the nice thing about that is if you want it to do something for you, you can still fiddle with this SQL statement. You can edit it. And it shows you have to run it for it to be available to the dashboard. And then you can see all the data down here. So this is why you need to be a little careful if you select star from the catalog, because if it's too big, then the dashboard can't handle it. The cluster, might run out of memory. And I recommend that you select only the things that you need. So for example, selecting only the columns that I need for this average MSRP by make. And then I'm selecting only the rows I need. So base MSRP had a lot of missing. So the data don't make a lot of sense if you remove the ones that have a 0 value, because that was kind of the missing value for the data set. Then you get numbers that sort of make sense, because a car is probably not going to be $7,000 if on average, if it's especially if it's an EV and that's only a couple years old. So but in general, you're going to want to only filter. You want to filter out the rows that you don't need and keep only the ones that you need, because that helps your dashboard stay small enough to quickly refresh and help you have a manageable amount of data for Databricks to work with. Because the other thing about some of these visualizations is you'll notice that this one says it is truncated. It's only showing a certain number of rows because there's a limit. So that's another reason why you'll want to filter so that you have control over what you're showing on this dashboard. So here's another example. This is that latitude and longitude. So I was taking the string and I'm kind of breaking it out to get the longitude and then to get the latitude. And then it's able to deal with this table. This is the resulting table where I have, okay, I have a state name because maybe I want to add that into the tooltip or into the target. Those are two things that you'll see. And then an average vehicle age. If I wanted to make some other visualization, this was when I was trying to get it to make a choropleth map for me. It was not able, no matter what I did to format the state column, it would not make me that map. It was not rendering it properly. So there, if we really, if we really needed one, we could have one, but just that particular thing, it was having a lot of trouble rendering it for me. So the data format is very important, and having, for example, with the SQL dashboard, it was not it would not be able to render the choropleth map with all the states and having them filled in if you had things that were not states that it will render. So DC, it would not be able to recognize your list of states. If you included DC in there, you'd need to take it out because it may not be able to deal with that and not able to recognize, oh, this is a list of states just because one thing was off. Anyway, so again, make sure you have things that only, only the things you need, and but having a little bit more than what you need, it works. Like, for example, the average MSRP, because we can cut it down to the 5 and display those, and then we can use another column to display. You can use one SQL query to do multiple visualizations and still select only what you need for it. So I'm going to go back to this canvas, and because we are in this, so I'm not going to mess up the one that I shared with you. I am going to create a new page and show you how to add a few visualizations. So I'm going to go down here and I'll click on this. And the first thing that pops up is it will let you use the AI assistant to create a chart, and it can do okay. Here, let's see how it does on this one. But for a lot of them, it either takes the wrong columns, or if the column is not formatted automatically, then it can give you some wrong stuff, and you're not able to filter out certain things in some of these visualizations. So if I wanted to, so let me explain what you're seeing. So I'll say I accept this visualization. It made me a bar chart with average electric range by make, but I know that there are a lot of missing values in electric range, and I'm not going to want to have all of those included. So here's a filter field, electric range, and then I'm going to click 0 and say exclude. And then I'll see that looks better. I would definitely check and make sure in maybe have a notebook with some examples just to make sure that things look right. This looks like it could be right, but based on some of the electric ranges, the ones that tend to have a higher range, yeah, okay, and the lower one, okay, maybe. I would definitely check these things that if you wanted to try and use the AI assistant. But the other thing is that you can do some things in here to change to make changes. Now I'm going to put a text in here. Let's give it a title. so that we can, a title here, a subtitle here, data source, Washington State EVs, call it snapshot 2024. You just put something there and you can use Markdown to make it formatted how you want. Let's do another visualization. And it is a little annoying to move these things around, but at least it does. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. At least it will, do some helpful things for you. And another thing to point out, so we have that second page and we still have all of our data sets available to us, which is nice. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to look at this average MSRP. We've got that. Here's our average electric range. Let's do this. I took out the 3 states that were not able to be rendered on the map. And maybe I wanted to exclude the military abroad, postal codes, and then British Columbia, stuff like that. Maybe you want to exclude some things just as an example, where to show that you can do that. So, okay, I want to use that. And I select my data set. I'm going to zoom back in. I want to make sure I give it a title. And I think I'd like to give it a description. So I'm going to set those. You click them to enable them over here on the side. And then you can click and then give it a title. You have to double click on them. So the data set, I think I said electric range. Here we go. And I've already filtered it. I'm not going to bother with the filter fields. Visualization. Let's see if there's, how about a line? And then the x-axis, I'll have the state. And the y-axis, we'll put that average range. And then color, you can mess with this a little bit. The SQL dashboard does not give you as many options for the different colors and things, but it does give you some options. And then tooltip, you can say, you can actually add other things here. So if you have a table that has your average electric range, state, and I don't know, maybe you want to know the average MSRP within that average range or within the state, then you can add that here. And then maybe you want to put labels, but maybe not because I see they're overlapping quite a bit. And then some kind of annotation, not supported. Okay. Let's see what that does. And that put it along put that line here. And so you can tell it, I want it to be, let's say I want it at 100. And I can enter a label if I want. Sorry, I clicked away and clicking back. And then that's pretty much it for that one. So we have a new chart that we can look at here. I'm going to make it a little smaller so you can see. So we have our title, and then you can change the display name. So I clicked on the chart. So every time you click on a chart, it'll pop up this right-hand menu. And then when you click on something like the y-axis, you have to click on this. And, well, actually, that's not what I want. There we go. Average electric range, where there is a value. And then maybe I want state to be capitalized. And then that kind of makes that chart look a little nicer. And then each chart having a title I would recommend because you can put the text between different things, but play around with it and see what makes the most sense. And so you can have, big things, you can have small things. With the this one up here, this is called a counter. So if you have some kind of summary or just a single number, and it will try to do these aggregations for you. So if you put a larger data set in there, I did not think it did a very good job of that. So I would still recommend that you have control over all of the SQL queries that are happening on your dashboard and do them here in the data. You may end up with quite a few. That's okay. But it probably won't be so many that you can't manage it, because you're making a dashboard. It's meant to be something that you can look at quickly and get an idea of what is happening here. So I know that was a lot of explanation. That was the SQL dashboard. I wanted to talk in depth about each one before, before moving on to the next one. And then there's also in this notebook some tips uh, on some of the different things about the dashboards. And I'd like to touch on a few of those just to give you a break for a second before we move on to the next one. So we have some data security things that we want to make note of in when we're making a dashboard. So the thing about the SQL dashboard, for example, I'm going to say publish. Good. I was hoping it would show me this. So if you have people who you have shared this with and they're viewers of this dashboard, I can notify when there is anything changed in the dashboard. You write a little thing. So it'll list them as viewers or subscribers, and that's a programming model where you have people who are receiving something that you publish, and that can go out to all of them. They see what's happening. So to security things, so the SQL dashboard is a little different than the notebook dashboard. And we have sensitive data that we work with. And I know that a lot of organizations need to go through certain disclosure review processes or institutional review board type things. I would imagine CMS has an ERB and a DRB, and things like that. So even though these are aggregations and you might think, oh, there's nothing here, that I can't share, I would recommend that you think very carefully before you share any dashboards that you make, based on, whatever kind of regulations you have to deal with the data that you're working with. If it's meant for statistical research purposes only, it has certain regulations. And then if it's the CMS data, I think, actually falls under HIPAA more, but don't quote me on that. You have different regulations for different data. So, try and keep these things in mind about data security. And the reason that I have this popped up on the screen is the default here for the SQL dashboard is it will embed your credentials. So somebody else can run this dashboard like as you, and they would have access to see the data that you're able to see, but only in the dashboard. So it's not like they're getting a nitty-gritty view, because when you publish, the data view goes away. If they don't have access to that draft view, then they won't see any of those tables. But I recommend to think carefully about how you're going to share your dashboards. This one says don't embed credentials. So somebody with if they have permission to see a certain table, then they'll be able to see this dashboard. So it'll use the person's data permission to run the queries instead of yours. And for my dashboard here, it doesn't matter, because this is public data anyway, which is why we're using it, because then I can present it to you. So I'm going to click publish, and there we go. And it'll, refresh the dashboard for you. And then it looks like this. We have that page 2. And then you can share your dashboard. And then you can also schedule this to be, and see there's the subscribers. So if you have the, it can send out a notification to anybody who's watching this when it gets refreshed. So you could refresh it every day, minute, hour, week. It depends on your needs. But so think about the data security when you're sharing your dashboards. I recommend you compute the queries that you want to make sure that you have control over what is being shown and shared. And especially with the big data that you might be working with, because I know some of you are working with data sets that are very big, and they can easily, the cluster can easily run out of memory if it if the query is too big. So computing the queries, only getting what you need is good. And for this particular example, you have to compute your own query for a map in the Databricks dashboards. It can't do it for you. And I wouldn't recommend you do it that way anyway. I recommend you have control over what it is being shown. So again, that data formatting is key. So the data formats here are important. If you have, let me show you, if I edit visualization, here's the map type. This is this that you're looking at now is the dashboard, the notebook dashboard. So geographic column, I've got a state column, and I have to tell it what type it is. USPS abbreviation, it expects the post office abbreviation, WA for Washington, VA for Virginia, MN for Minnesota, TX for Texas, that kind of stuff. You can also put a name, an ANSI code, 8-character code, a geographic ID. You can do the FIPS code, and it says 2 characters. So if your FIPS code is a numeric column, you'll probably need to change it to a string column to make sure that it has the leading zeros for the states that only have the single digits and things like that. So the formatting matters, and it's not just for this map or for this visualization, it's for the other ones. And then you have the value column, and it has to already be aggregated. So that is an example where to show that formatting matters, and that's for some of these you have to create your own query. So the data formatting, strings, integers, the longitude and latitude have to be at decimal. And then some of these strings, this one I wanted to present at like this because the notebook dashboard may be able to do this with the $ and stuff. I don't think it was able to do the $ for me, but it might be able to. There are a lot more options in the notebook dashboard for formatting that are available. But I would be careful with the way that the using those formats, because if something changes about how they serve up the platform to you, then it might change how the formatting appears on your data, and if you're not expecting it, so if you do these queries on your own, then that will help with the formatting too. Text is expected to be in Markdown. I included the Markdown cheat sheet just because it's so nice for this. If you guys, I refer to it every once in a while if there's something that I haven't done in a long time, but this cheat sheet, it just has all the things that you do in Databricks Markdown. And that link is there. You can alter the colors and the themes. So the notebook dashboard has a lot more options for the formatting and for colors and themes. In this example, the map that it gave me had a very dark blue for the maximum value. So this black here in these few little places, that was the maximum value for this map. And I turned it to black because it showed you a color that was very close to this one in Nevada. It was just like almost the same color for the highest value. And I really wanted to see, the difference there. So you can make some of those changes. And I didn't see any options for it because if you have to do any accessibility checking, or if you have requirements for 508, I think this kind of map, I think some of the workarounds that I've seen in the past are, you serve up a table that somebody can use with a screen reader, and then you also have the visualization. But there were other places where I would have to make sure that visualization, way back when I did more analysis and data science than I do now, but it would have to have like little hashes or little lines, and there would have to be different for every, section or bar or whatever. But I don't see that very often anymore, so I'm not sure if I don't think that's as big of a deal as it used to be. And then you can edit SQL queries that are supporting the dashboard, like I showed you, where you can go in. So say I've got, oh, that's right. So let's say, go back to that draft view. And so this little thing means that it's running. So it has, I've got these and I can edit these anytime and then rerun the dashboard. Whenever I click run, it'll show me the new table down here. So you can edit these. If you have the AI create one for you, then you'll need to check it because it does not seem to do a very good job, but you can always come back in here and edit. If you needed something to get you started, that is, make sure you check that. The notebook dashboard content. So going back to, I'm going to go back up because the section of the kind of summarizing the notebook dashboard. Here I have a very quick step by step of what you need to do to get something in the notebook dashboard. So you read in your data, you compute your summary statistics, you use the display. That's the important thing here is this is what enables the notebook dashboard magic to happen. Whenever you use display here, for example, we just got a count of all rows in this catalog data set. And I can actually click on here and you can see all the different options. I don't recommend you do either of these, but you can add to notebook dashboard and you can either do that or add to new. And then for the notebook dashboards, the person you're sharing it with has to have access to this data too. And then you can click on this plus sign to do a visualization. Here's one that's already been created, and I can add to notebook dashboard. And you can have more than one dashboard. So say you have something to enable a manager to get an overview of some of the data. Maybe you get a data delivery, you have counts, you have averages, you have how much is missing, and maybe you compare that to a prior thing. Maybe you have some sort of dashboard for a manager that empowers them to have a good sense of the data. You could have multiple dashboards from one notebook that shares, with a different audience or a different purpose. But I only have one here. That's all I need. And then I can go click the plus, go to visualization. Visualization type is a counter for this particular one. And then it does format the decimal, or sorry, the thousand separator. And if you're, if you were in Europe, I suppose, you could, change that up so that you have whatever formatting is appropriate for your audience or for your publications or for, whatever it is that you're doing, that you would have that going on. Okay. And then, so that's the counter. And I like that one just because I like numbers. So, oops. And then, I'll go over some of the dashboard, the pros and cons before I show you more about the notebook dashboard. The notebook dashboard and the SQL dashboard. It's called a SQL dashboard because you can only use SQL with it. It uses a SQL warehouse cluster under it, so that only enables you to use SQL. And that's also why some of the features the features that you have access to are not that you don't have as many as you do with the notebook dashboard. In the notebook dashboard, you have a personal cluster. So here's my personal cluster that I have running right now to support this notebook, and to it will refresh the dashboard. And that's also going to allow me to refresh the dashboard if I select a different state from a drop-down menu. But that will also allow you to use any code language that's supported by the cluster. So for Databricks, that's Python, R, you could use SQL. And then there's Scala, but I know not a lot of users are using Scala. I just like to mention it because I like Scala. Your data sources, you've got your whatever is supported by the cluster. There's a lot more that you can do with widgets and things in the notebook dashboard than with the SQL dashboard. The formatting, there's more customization for this notebook here than there is for the other thing. You can schedule refreshing jobs with both types. For a notebook dashboard, you probably put it in a job and you could schedule that, and you could let people know that that job ran. You could let people know if it succeeded or failed, or, notify yourself if it fails. And then, sharing things, in the dashboard, you can share both. It's probably easier to share the SQL dashboard. And then, the SQL dashboard technically lets you do all point and click, and you don't really have to know code, but I recommend that you know your SQL and know what's happening on that dashboard. So let's go back down to more notebook contents. And the notebook dashboard looks like this. So here I've clicked over to this, and about that, let me do this so you can see it more. So this one it's a little different because I was able to do this map here when I wasn't able to get it to work in the SQL dashboard without, I'm sure I could get it to work, but just not, don't need to spend a lot of time on that. And then here's this same bar chart. I have three counter visualizations. Oops, they are connected to this. So let's see what's Delaware got. And it should refresh this for me, but it doesn't seem to be. So I'll just rerun it because sometimes you do have to tell it to run, and it will go. So it's thinking about all that. And as you make different visualizations, you have the options over here for just the general notebook. And I click full screen, and that'll show me the dashboard just sort of like this. Like if I was presenting something to my team or to a stakeholder or my, a manager or something like that, I would probably put it in this view, and I would scroll through and, explain all the different pieces. But that's how you get to that full screen. It's over here. You can also copy a link to the dashboard, how you like to drag and drop things, how wide do you want your dashboard? Those big things are all over here. And there's another option when you create a new notebook dashboard. It asks you if you want to just import everything from the notebook. That will import every output, including all of your markdown. So if you had a notebook, so for example, the one that I've shared with you here, it would import all of the text explanation, and I didn't want that in there. So that is not, that's an option. So if you have a notebook where that makes sense, then, then you can do that. So these different stats for the state selected, and sometimes these dashboards don't want to behave themselves, so it thinks it doesn't have that all. It did not refresh this part, and I'm sorry about that. So let's go back to notebook view, because maybe there was an error, and we'll see it on our notebook view. And sometimes it will show you an error on the dashboard view, but the notebook view will actually give you a detailed explanation of what's going on. And I'll scroll down real quick because for these, you have a lot of control over how to present your filters. And I'll show you that first, I guess. So if you want to create a widget, that is how you create a filter or like a parameter or something like that for your notebook. That makes the notebooks interactive and interesting, and people can select exactly what they want to look at. It kind of allows you to digest things in pieces. So you have to define so for example, in this dropdown, you have to define what what is the dropdown list, what's contained in that. And you need to create the widget itself, and then you put them together, and then it will appear at the top of your notebook where you can select either in the notebook or in the dashboard. It'll show it on both. So if I have a list of states, and I'm only interested in showing you the states that in this dashboard that that exist. So I don't want to list all 50 states. I select distinct state from my data set, and I'm going to exclude just to show you, just to give you an idea. Since this is small enough, I can put it 2 pandas to allow me to make it into a list. So 2 pandas, just give me the state from the pandas data frame, and then put that into a list. So then I can sort the list, and that put it in alphabetical order. So that means, you have the, I don't know, Alabama first, or, whatever, Alaska probably. Anyway, so then I'm inserting at the very first part of the list, all. So that gives me a whole list of state codes. And then I tell it, I want a drop down widget, create this drop down widget, call it states, default is all, and then your state codes. I want the list. This is just what is the list of drop down items. And then you want to tell it that I want to get whatever is in the widget. So that's why a default is, I think you have to put a default. So so that it can give you something when it creates this initially. And then you can select, and then that put that selected code from the widget into a variable that you can use in your query. So this little section here, these are the two sections of the notebook dashboard. So, oops, let's go back to dashboard view. Oh, nope, nope. There we go. So this dashboard has stats for states selected, and then I called this one National Overview. It's not a great title for this section. I think you'd want to be a little more, keep your story a little more tight and cohesive than I have here, but I just wanted to show you all the different things you can do. And so if you want a title in the notebook dashboard, you have to put it in the notebook. So that's why that is down here. And then there's a little explanation here between them. So if you want to create a visualization, you have to take do some kind of query, do some kind of data frame, Spark data frame or something. And then you can, so for example, here, if we have all, I want to select everything. And then if we have a state selected, if it's not all, then I want to say where state equals my selected code. So we put this code in here that serves us up something different based on what has been selected in the widget filter parameter thing. And so it says no rows were returned, and I'd want to look at that and figure out why it had no rows returned for this when it had rows and something else. But this may, because there were a lot of data missing for the base MSRP and the average range. So I just picked a bad state that probably had, and not bad state, but I picked a state that had no data for those. So once I selected a state with no data and it said base MSRP is greater than 0, then maybe that state, the vehicles in that state location were only 0. So no rows returned. And then we have an electric range. And then that'll, so you do get, once you get your table, you have a number, and then you can click the plus to create a visualization. I created a counter here, but it looks like the counter that I showed you. So these different things, and so they're all about the same, where I have select all. If it's all, then select everything. If it's not all, then give me the state that I've selected. And here's your count. You have 2 EVs in the state that was selected, and then I can click up here on this little down arrow, add to dashboard, and it's already added, so there's a check mark here. Or I could add a new dashboard. And then here I have 2 visualizations that I want to create from one data set. Here's a note about what I said about some of these columns have a lot of data missing, so they don't make a lot of sense to use, but it's just an example. So here we have a count of all the missing, and this is not something in the visualizations. So if I add to notebook dashboard, it's not there. I don't want it there. I just wanted to show there's a lot of missing. So you can have your notebook have other things in it, supporting information. So if you did have to make a presentation and you had a section of people might ask about X, you could include that in there. It won't be in the dashboard. You don't have to include it. So here's the bar chart. So this is similar to what we saw in the SQL dashboard, where I have this one query and I'm using SQL in this notebook dashboard. You can use whatever you want. So I'm using this Python cell to select this here. And And I recommend that because when you grab things from the catalog, if you select only what you need right away, then that helps your queries, that helps everything run a lot more smoothly. Of course, when you're doing exploratory analysis and you're checking out the data for the first time, or if you're checking for a new look at it, or if it's something that you're developing code for new analysis or something like that. Of course, you're going to be looking at bigger pieces and other pieces and smaller pieces, but once you have an idea of what you want and exactly what you want for something, I recommend that you take that for your production ready thing. So like here, for example, I have only the rows I need, only the columns I need, and I may have looked at more earlier, but for this final piece, that is all I need. So I always like to recommend that for everything, basically. But I'm able to use this query for two visualizations because I want the string, the formatted string, and then I want the string that's a number. So the number string can go here, and I could probably put in, let's see, some of these have a thing where it allows you to put like a tooltip or a target value. It would, if it, where did it go? But sometimes they'll let you do that, and you might be able to do like a tooltip value here where it's like formatted and it's pretty. Instead of just showing you 102K, but 102K is fine. And this is just giving you an idea. It's a visualization, which ones are bigger, which ones are smaller.
Hey,
And then the
Katie,
top,
can,
yeah,
can we
I'm
wrap this up in
almost
2
done.
minutes?
Yeah, I'm almost done. I'm watching the
No,
clock.
perfect. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And so because it does not look like I'm almost, but I am. So this table here is that second table, and it's coming from the same data set. So I'm able to display and just select. I'm using PySpark to select from the data frame because I have the one data frame and I can use it for multiple things. And if you're able to think that way, that can also help your notebooks run more smoothly and more efficiently. Instead of doing the same query twice, this allows more flexibility. So if I changed something about my original query and I wanted still the top 5 and that formatted, then I would still be able to get that here, and I wouldn't have to change this if I changed the earlier one. So then here's the line chart, and it looks like this. I just did the SQL cell just to show you that you can. You can also do R, and whatever you do in your R cell, that would be fine. And then you can do all these different things. So we looked at these two different ways of doing the dashboards. I'll go to this pros and cons here. And hopefully after seeing this, you can, feel comfortable like poking around in the dashboard, some of the pitfalls, making sure that you check out your formatting. If something's not rendering, is my column formatted correctly? Are there any values that are kind of weird or that would mess up the rendering? These are the questions you should ask yourself if you run into problems. That SQL dashboard, it's not as customizable, but it's kind of fast and easy, which makes it really nice. It's easy to share. The notebook dashboard is really flexible. There's a lot that you can do with it that has more, it supports the multiple languages. There's more things you can do with it. So I hope that you feel confident to go play around with the dashboards and make some really awesome ones. And I appreciate your attending today. I hope that you will fill out our survey. I'm going to let Laura do her thing with that, but I always like to plug the survey. We really do look at it, and we appreciate any feedback or any questions, any ideas for things you want to see in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Before we move on to the survey, are there any questions for Katie? If you do have any, feel free to drop them in the chat. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. All right, I'm not seeing any, but If anything comes to mind, you're more than welcome to drop it in the chat. I'm also gonna administer the survey. If you think of your question later on, you're more than welcome to put that question at the very end of the survey. If you also have any topics that you'd like to see us present that haven't been presented or are not available in portal, you're more than welcome to suggest those. And as always, let us know how we're doing. We take that feedback and we take it back to the team, and we always try to improve and give you more topics that you haven't heard of before. But with that said, once you're done with the survey, you're more than welcome to drop. Thank you all for attending. As always, we'll be posting the recording and all the materials into portal. Just give us a few days to turn those around. Just a few more seconds on that survey, and then I'll go ahead and close it out. All right, great. Oh, thank you so much.